Cash flow is key. Whether you have a lot of money or a little bit, understand what's coming in and understand what's going out. And you also want to think about these 4 key areas: what you have, what you owe, what protects you, and what you maybe want to leave as legacy.
Hi everyone, this is Katana Abbott and I want to welcome you to Smart Women Talk. A recent study by Bank of America finds that 94% of women believe they'll be personally responsible for their finances at some point, but less than half feel confident about their money, and only 28% feel empowered to do it. So how you handle money will affect every area of your life: where you live, where your kids go to school, the food you eat, your health, and ultimately whether you can retire comfortably someday. This year, I am on a mission to empower women to stand in their power with money, not only to earn more, but to make it work for you. Today, I've invited in a fellow certified financial planner, Eva Moulton, and she is joining us to talk about how to take charge of your finances. We'll talk about how to get started in investing, the tools that make it easier, and what you can do today to make the most impact on your future. Eva, with that, welcome to Smart Women Talk. It's so exciting to have you here.
Thank you so much, Katana. I'm happy to be here and excited to share with your audience.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started with Ameriprise back when it was American Express Financial Advisors, which I'm sure you recall, right? So 25 years ago, I started with them. I've always loved the company. I've loved the idea of working with people to help them achieve their financial goals. And particularly women. My mom became widowed at a very young age. And really, my dad had taken care of the finances up to that point. So I saw what struggle she went through. And on top of that, I have 3 beautiful girls, and I want them to feel empowered to be able to make those financial decisions on their own in the future, which we as women make a lot of financial decisions, but we are not as represented in the financial field. So I really love being a part of this and helping women reach their financial goals. I was actually also a part of the Women's Empowerment Network at Ameriprise. I was their president. So I really hold these goals of empowering, educating, and inspiring women really personally. So I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, I think this is so important for women to be empowered. And I just shared a stat that was surprising. And we've done our own surveys here at Smart Women's Empowerment. And what I found is that women are not comfortable talking about money.
Right.
And a lot of times they have these disempowering beliefs, and it goes back to being confident. Just in whatever is happening in your life, it shows up in your money.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't know where to start. Do you find this as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't know where to start, or are scared, or just most people don't want to feel uncomfortable, right? And so getting comfortable with that uncomfortable feeling is really the first step, right? So I think when we talk through these things, the first thing I always tell people is start with something that is really inspirational or motivational to you, because it makes it more likely that you're going to achieve those financial goals, right? So think about the things that are important to you. What are your financial goals? What do you want to accomplish, whether it's short term, long term, or both, right? Maybe it's as easy as, I need a new car, or I need a new phone, or maybe I want to take some piano lessons, right? Or ultimately I want to retire. But starting with those goals and writing those goals down, there's all of these studies that say that if you write down your goals, you're far more likely to achieve them. And so I think that will hopefully help people start to get comfortable with that initial step, because you want to have kind of the end in mind.
Yeah, that's so interesting that just a small goal like that, would that be a reason to actually start with an advisor? Because a lot of times people have very little, and they're really just trying to start saving. So for someone who's single and they're just starting out, do you have a tip for them on how to get started, just building up a savings account, let's say? What's the most important thing for them to do?
Yeah, I do think that, right, once you've started with that financial goal in mind, right, get that positive feeling from that exercise first. So set your financial goals, and then you really want to understand where you're at. So I think the most important thing is really understanding your cash flow at first. What's coming in, what's going out. You'd be so surprised about how many people just don't know what they're spending. They've never taken the time. And it is a tedious exercise at first, but I promise you it is enlightening, and it can sometimes save you money. So many things are on subscription or auto pay these days. It is easy to miss what you're actually paying another company or someone else. So cash flow, I think, is key. Whether you have a lot of money or a little bit, understand what's coming in and understand what's going out. So that would probably be the first place I would start. And so you also want to think about these 4 key areas: what you have, what you owe, what protects you, and what you maybe want to leave as legacy. And obviously the legacy part is far further in the future, but understanding where you're at so that you know what you need to do to get you to where you want to be is critical.
I think one of the big problems now with the new technology, do you find that people come in and they don't really have paper statements coming in, and they are not looking through those statements?
Yep, absolutely. They're not looking through them, or they just don't even receive them, right? Because they're coming into their email and they don't have time, which is completely understandable. I'm happy to share. I do have an Excel spreadsheet that I use with clients to write down their expenses. I know you've done this as well, Katana. So it's a good exercise to go through, and at least once a year, once every 2 years. You don't have to do it all the time. But I think it is nice to get that down on paper, or at least have it somewhere where you can easily access it and understand it. And if you do have statements coming into you via email, set a little bit of time aside just to review those, just to understand what's happening with your finances, because it is important, and you may be able to save yourself some money, or you may be able to notice something that shouldn't be there. Whereas if you're just passing those by, you're not going to have an idea of what's going out.
And again, I know we have listeners and young people starting to join us, because I know a lot of our listeners are boomers, but a lot of the younger people are starting to get involved in their finances too in big ways. Let's say that somebody is in debt and they also have a goal to, let's say, save up for something. Maybe they want to save for a house. So should they tackle the debt first, or should they be doing both at the same time? Because I think that's often a challenge, and right now those credit cards are at 30%.
If we're speaking simply numerically, if we take a look at the interest, like you're saying that they're paying, they'd be better off just putting money toward the credit card. But it is a slippery slope if you put all of your money toward something that you can't access. You could access the credit in the future, but you obviously can't get your cash back once you've paid that credit card. So paying down debt is very important, but I think second to understanding your cash flow, it's also critical to have a cash reserve for emergencies or opportunities. And so even if you can put $50 from your paycheck aside initially just to build up 3 to 6 months worth of your committed expenses, right? It's not about going to the movies or dining out. It's about paying your utilities or rent, things that you can't go without. I think it is important to do both of those things together. You want to try to put as much toward that as possible, especially if you've got high interest. But at the same time, you also need a little bit of cash reserve, because if something happens, you're right back into the debt cycle if you don't have something to tap into for those emergencies. That would be my recommendation, and that's usually where we start with people, because you want to have a little bit of that cash reserve, but you also don't want to let that get out of hand.
Right.
And to be honest, you can also call your credit card companies, right? I always make this suggestion to people, because if you're a good consumer, you've been paying your credit card consistently over the months, you should be able to call and say, hey, I could get an offer from a different credit card at a much lower interest rate. What can you do to keep me as a customer? And oftentimes credit card companies, they don't want to lose that interest payment, right? They may reduce it for you so that it's a little bit more manageable. And if they don't, maybe consider transferring that debt. It really depends because you have to worry about fees. There are transfer fees when transferring debt to different credit card companies, but all of this is something you can research easily and you have the power to make that decision.
That's really great advice. Now, you had said there was some tools that you wanted to share today. Is there something specific that you recommend people go to?
Yeah, so they can go to my website and we've got some calculators and tools and information there. I can also pass along that expense worksheet, which we can just add on the website if people want to take advantage of that and really detail their cash flow. But another great tool is your bank statement. You can look at your bank statement. You can see what you're spending, what's going in, what's going on, what's going out. Most people use credit cards, right? Very few people use cash for everything nowadays. And your credit card statement is another invaluable source of information. You can really tap into what you have there to get information on how much you're spending. And a lot of credit cards now will allow you to itemize. You can select what was spent on entertainment, what was spent on dining. With all of these advances in technology, your credit card statement is probably giving you a lot of information about your spending habits. So those are just some tools that you can access easily and for free to be able to determine your cash flow.
I remember back after the 2020 crash and the market just zoomed up because of all the money printing. I started sending these newsletters out asking people to please meet with their advisor, look at their statement, because almost everyone I was meeting with was 100% stocks, but they would say, I'm diversified, I'm in mutual funds, but they were all stock funds. And you know how these stock funds invest in the same things. So the problem was they were all in the same kind of assets. And then in 2022, we had that big correction that came in again. So my concern is the Buffett indicator is showing it's highly overvalued in the market. And I just think for people that have 401ks, they have IRAs, maybe they have brokerage accounts, that they need to take a look at those investments and see what their asset mix is. Everyone who's been in stocks has just made a boatload of money the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
But with us at these high valuations, what are your thoughts? Are you meeting with people and having them rebalance, or are you making this kind of a suggestion to people?
Definitely, we're having conversations about your risk tolerance because it is so nice to be able to see those big numbers in terms of returns, but those same assets that provide you those big numbers in terms of returns when the market's going are going to be the assets that pull back significantly if we have a correction, right? Understanding your risk tolerance is really important. Know what you're happy with on the upside, but also understand what will make you concerned and worried on the downside. And then know how much time you have to accomplish your goals. If you are in your 20s and you're looking at a retirement fund, you can afford to be more risky because you have more time. Now, everyone is different. So I would say you really want to look at this in an individual case. What is great for you, Katana, may not be great for your neighbor. So it is really important to understand where you fall on that spectrum, but it is something you should be discussing with your financial advisor or reviewing on your own if you're making those investment decisions yourself. But it is critical. You're absolutely right, because it is very easy to get enamored with returns when the market is going well. Understanding what will happen in a correction or if the market pulls back is more difficult, right? But extremely important for everyone to consider.
And it's especially important for young people. They can take the volatility. They can be in 90% or 100% equities because they're dollar cost averaging, usually in their retirement plans, and they've got lots of time. But as we get closer to retirement, having a 20% correction right when you're getting ready is just devastating.
Yes, you should have a model allocation based on what you're comfortable with risk, based on your time frame. and based on your goals. And you should be rebalancing to that model allocation consistently. Now, that doesn't mean every week, but you should review it semi-annually and consider what you're doing at least annually. And so that is really critical to understand where you are in relation to your model, because it's very easy to let those performing well continue to perform well, but then they become a bigger portion of your portfolio. And then if they are an overwhelming representation of your portfolio, and then something happens to that sector or that fund, right, then that's when the problem occurs. And it's important to note, like you had mentioned, investments like mutual funds hold individual stocks. And so it may be that you have 4 different mutual funds, but they all hold a significant portion in one stock. And that one company, the performance of that company can either be beneficial or detrimental to your portfolio. So understanding what is your stock representation in your portfolio is important as well. And normally people don't figure that out on their own. They work with their financial advisor to do that, but that's certainly something we look at to ensure that you are not overrepresented in one particular company. I've been doing this long enough, and you have as well. We remember Enron, and we're not saying anything like that is going to happen, but because there is a risk associated with so much money in one position, you have to take it into consideration.
Or just with a class, all these
Yep.
technology stocks, they make up the bulk
Yep.
of most of the portfolios right now. That's really important. You said something about a model portfolio.
Yes.
Why don't you explain what that means?
Sure. So when you either work on your own or work with an advisor, you will determine how much money you should have in stocks or stock mutual funds. Another word for this is equities, and how much you should have in things that are like bonds or cash products, some things that are a lot less volatile. So usually when we look at portfolios, we split between equities or stocks and fixed income or bond-like positions or more conservative positions. And so let's say your portfolio, based on your time frame, your risk tolerance, and your goals, is set to 50% in stocks and 50% in bonds. This would be a 50-50 portfolio. And all of a sudden, stocks do great, and now they become 60% of your portfolio. You're going to have to sell off some of those stocks to bring you back to that 50-50 model. And more than likely, your bonds at that time would have decreased in terms of representation in the portfolio. So it's actually a great practice to take the gains that you've made in that position that has become a larger portion of the portfolio and reallocate it toward those investments that are now underweight in the portfolio. And that will bring you back to that model. So selling off things that have made money, buying things that have maybe depreciated or are now lower than they should be in terms of representation of your portfolio to bring you back to that original model. So hope that answers it.
Yes, smart. Okay. Now, most people get started investing when they get a job and they get a 401k plan. And if they're self-employed, they may set up an IRA. Or if they're going to make a lot of money, they can do a SEP IRA, which is a simplified employee pension plan. And we have new things called Roth. I'd like you to just take a moment and talk about this idea of investing and why it's so important for someone to start investing and how they go about it.
This is near and dear to my heart because my oldest daughter, who is a sophomore in college, is now officially employed at her college. And we just went through and talked about saving. Number one, if you have an employer who provides a 401k or a 403b, any sort of retirement plan, and they are offering matching contributions, please take advantage of that. That is essentially free money to you. The employer is saying, if you contribute X amount, we will match it, right, with X amount. And so that I would say is critical to begin with. If you start young, put those dollars aside right from your paycheck, you're not even going to notice it. And so making sure that you have that mentality at the onset of any job that you have to be able to put money aside, especially if your employer is matching that contribution, no brainer. I would definitely do that. Number two, is this Roth that you're mentioning. And the Roth is a great investment vehicle, especially when you're young, because it doesn't give you a tax break today. What money you earn, you can contribute to a Roth up to a limit, but then that money grows completely tax-free. And upon your retirement or reaching 59 and a half, you can access those dollars tax-free. Now, there are instances in which you can access those dollars beforehand, but for our purposes today, I want to talk about long-term investments because time value of money is huge. It's a huge benefit to be able to start out young. And Roth IRAs, which I encouraged my daughter to start, and I'm happy to say she did, on top of her 403B, will enable her to put money towards something that will provide her with tax-free income in the future. Now, right now, she makes very little, so she's not really interested in a tax deduction, which is precisely why once you reach a certain income threshold, you won't be able to make Roth contributions. But when you're at a level where you don't need that tax deduction for the Roth, for a contribution, the Roth is a great answer to that to create a little bit of control for yourself in terms of taxes in the future.
Yeah, and when you're making a lot of money, and let's say you're married and you've got two incomes, you're going to probably have a CPA doing your taxes, and that's when you have that conversation.
Exactly.
Should I do a Roth or to do a traditional? And they'll let you know how much the tax deduction will be, but then you can also think about, would I like to have that tax-free pot of money?
And if you do have a significant amount in income coming in, even in retirement, you're not subjecting yourself to potentially having taxes on Social Security, depending on your level, or having additional payments for Medicare, because those are subject to income levels as well. So it really does offer you tax control in the future, and it is such a great investment to take advantage of today. Now, I will say and point out, if you are not working, right, and if you don't have earned income, you cannot make a Roth contribution. However, you can consider what's called a Roth conversion. You don't have to have earned income for that. So that is usually something you're going to work with your advisor on. I could go into that with someone if they're interested, but please know that not everyone can just open up a Roth. You do have to have earned income for that.
Now I'd like to talk about financial planning, which is very dear to both of our hearts,
Yes.
because again, think about this. I started in 1987 and we started doing financial planning when no one was doing it, and we charged a fee. And so it's just such a natural thing for me, but I'm surprised how many people haven't done financial planning. So can you talk a little bit about what the financial planning process is and why it's so important to do this?
Yeah, I think it's getting an idea of your entire financial picture. I think most people, when they think of financial planning, they incorrectly only think of investments, but investments are just a small portion of financial planning. There's so many other nuances that come into this and things that you have to consider, right? Like you said, you have to consider your income. So what are the tax consequences of that? You have to consider your estate planning, your protection planning. What if you aren't able to earn income? How is that going to affect you in the future? Goal planning, your retirement, if you're buying a house, if you're looking to educate your kids or helping grandkids, all of those things are encompassed in this financial planning statement. And so if you are looking to have a comprehensive review of your entire financial situation and you want things to work in tandem and smoothly, you do really want to partake in financial planning, not just investments, looking at your entire financial picture to determine the best strategies for you. And there are various strategies. I always say to my clients, I'm going to give you options on what you can do, but you'll determine which is best for you. I'll give you the pros and the cons of each and how that will affect your entire financial picture, but ultimately the decision is yours as to what you're most comfortable with. So financial planning is this simple thing to say, but it is a really much more comprehensive and complex view of your entire financial picture.
And I'm going to add something to that because I help people looking at retirement and when to take Social Security. And I also help people with fixed indexed annuities to create a pension for themselves.
Sure. Mhm.
And when we run the plan just based on their current situation, the nice thing about having our software, and I really want to point this out because I think you use a similar
That's
software.
right. Mhm.
Okay, having the software, we can actually say, if we do this and this, your chances of success might go from 60% to 90%.
Precisely. Yes.
And if you wait too long, time, like you said, if you have time, then you can make these adjustments early. But if you make
Yeah,
adjustments late, sometimes it's almost impossible. So,
exactly.
so
Yes.
having that clear picture, seeing the big picture
It's
is,
so critical. It's so critical. And you're right. You can make tiny little changes to various different inputs to determine how to best accomplish that long-term goal and cash flow needs. And so retirement, I always feel, is this big goal, but there's so much more to it once you reach that actual level. Once you reach retirement, you then get to start to think about how to distribute all that money that you've worked so hard to accumulate to be able to do the things you want to do. And ultimately, if you don't use it all, although most of my clients say I'd like to use every last penny, but if you don't, then to leave the legacy that you want to for your beneficiaries. You do really want to start with the goals in mind to understand what's important to you
yes.
and what you want to dedicate your money and time to. Because if you're going to work hard for it, you might as well be enjoying yourself in the future once you've accumulated those dollars for that purpose.
Yeah, because the money's just a tool for us to enjoy our lives.
Precisely. Yeah.
So let's talk about advisors. What's a good rule about how to find an advisor?
I think aside from education and ensuring accreditation and proper licensing, which are key, and I'll talk about, I think consider your personality. You are going to be spending time with this person and you want to be comfortable with them. You want them to understand your goals. You want them to understand your worries and concerns. So I think, there's obviously things that are important that are education, experience, things like that, firm. But I also think a lot of times people overlook the fact that they will have to have a relationship with this person for a long time. Most of my clients I've worked with for over 20 years. So they've become dear friends to me, and I appreciate that. And I hope they appreciate it. We've been working together for so long, it seems they do. And so I think that's one thing that I would say is critical to ensure both you and your spouse, if you're going together, like working with this person and enjoy this person. The basics I would say are look for someone who has the right experience and education. You can find their credentials either on their website if it's a referral that you've received. Obviously, if you are looking to work with someone at Ameriprise, you can look them up on their website. I have information on my website. You can also use the CFP website, Certified Financial Planner Practitioner. That is a designation. I always say it's similar to what a CPA has for accounting. It's more rigorous testing and experience. And so you can use the CFP website to search for advisors. I am a CFP. If you're looking for a CFP, I am on that website. But that's a great place to start to have a little bit of confidence. But like I said, education, experience, areas of focus. Some people focus on certain things. A lot of financial advisors focus on financial planning as a whole, but some may have some specialties. If you have special needs children, you might want to work with an advisor who has experience with that. So think about what's important to you and find that person. But most important, after all of those education factors have been met, is really personality and that you'll enjoy working with them.
This has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Eva.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time, Katana.
So we're going to put your link to your website in the notes below, but they can go to your full name because it's
Eva Moulton. So you can Google my name or you can just Google Ameriprise and then Eva, which is spelled just like Eva, EVA. Moulton is the last name. That's M as in Mary, Oulton. And my website should pop up, but we will include the link. And once you're at that website, you'll have an opportunity to contact me if you'd like. You can also look at some of the resources and insights. I've got some great articles there, so please feel free to reach out.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Katana. Yes, wonderful
Good
to see you and wonderful to chat with you.
And everyone, thanks again for joining us. I know this was going to be very helpful to you. And if you love this and you want more, be sure to go to joinsmartwomen.com and get on our list, because you'll be invited to our academy. You'll know who's coming to the show. And when you're watching these videos or listening to the podcast, be sure to subscribe and to like them. That really does help us out. So until our next time, go out and live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity.